Have you ever reacted in a way that you later regretted? Say something that you didn't mean? Shut down when you should have spoken up? Spiraled internally while trying to look at a composed on the outside? Most of us don't lack intelligence. We lack a system in the moment. Today, we're going to be talking about a practical framework for emotional regulation, awareness, and intentional response, especially when things get hard. Now, Paul is here today, and he's going to tell us a little about himself, and we're going to just jump right into it because he teaches something that's really amazing, and he's going to tell us about it. But I am really excited, Paul, to have you on the show. Thank you so much for coming on. Can you briefly tell everybody a little about yourself?
Sure. I usually say that I'm a recovering management consultant. So I spent 20 years going around the world working for uh, large corporate clients in Times Top 100, the large organizations as well as public sector and in the third sector. And I went around the world solving problems. During that process, I came to a point where I looked around and I said, I'm not enjoying what I'm doing. I should be enjoying what I'm doing, but I'm not. What's going on? Why do I feel so miserable? And that really was the start of a journey that took me into a number of inquiries and investigations about who am I and how do we work as human beings. And I became fascinated with all of that. So I studied
Yes.
psychotherapy, I studied energy psychology, and now I'm an executive coach and a team coach working with a variety of individuals and organizations.
Oh, I love that. Now, when someone is triggered, what actually is happening?
When someone is triggered, that's they're getting a message. They're scanning the environment for something that's tells them that they're safe. That my story that I've built up about myself, my narrative, my sense of who I am, my identity. I get a feeling on the inside of me that is uncomfortable.
Right.
Um, could be I've got sweaty palms, my breathing's not well, I'm not sleeping well, I'm not digesting my food well. I'm snappier with people I care about more than I'm snappier. I can't, um, I'm consuming things that I know aren't good for me,
Right.
um, but they give me somehow relief. In 2000, I smoked 40 cigarettes a day, and I look back at that now and I go, what
Wow.
were you doing? What on earth made you think? But, that was a pattern of comfort. That was a pattern of helping me deal with this internal sense of I'm in disequilibrium, I'm out of balance. And we
Yeah.
learn coping mechanisms to do that. So what's going on is usually some kind of internal feeling. And
Hmm.
where that's uncomfortable, we're going into our memories, trying to figure out what is this? Have I experienced it before?
Yeah.
Um, what's the memory of this? Where did I learn this? And when we figure that out, we're comfortable to go, oh, I know how to ease that feeling, that internal discomfort. I'll smoke a cigarette, I'll drink, and it doesn't always have to be negative things necessarily. It's like, oh, I'll go and see my grandchildren, I'll go for a walk in the forest, because I know, or I'll go for a run, or I'll go for a swim. I'll do something that changes that internal biochemistry back into something that feels more comfortable. And we kind of go through this wave of, I feel uncomfortable, I feel more comfortable. But what we want to do is we want to sort of, instead of having massive peaks and troughs, we want to get to a point where life throws stuff at you for sure.
Oh,
It,
yeah.
it's never it's never going to be a bed of roses, and it's then comes down to how do you deal with it. So, if we have a memory that enables to do that, some of the challenges come though when we don't have a memory. We kind of, I don't recognize this, and then we feel even more unsafe.
Right.
And then for we look for ways to compensate that. Some of those are empowering ways of doing that. We say we reach a point where we go, I'm not happy here. I'm going to get an education. I'm going to go back to school, or I'm going to study at night. I'm going to study at night, and I'm going to learn this, and I'm going to move from where I am today, which is a place of discomfort, to a place where I feel more comfortable, or I think I will be more comfortable.
Right.
Um, and those, at a sort of 50,000 foot level, that's what's going on. I mean, it's very different for individuals. It depends how they've been conditioned, how the circumstances in which they were brought up, and the messages that they've taken on board, either consciously or unconsciously.
Right. Now, is it a nervous system activation?
Yes. Yeah. Essentially, there is we are our biology, and ever since humans have walked the planet, we've always had to scan the horizon. I always tell people to imagine a radar on a ship. The signal that goes round, and when there's bandits at 10 o'clock, it's kind of like blip,
Yeah.
blip, and you're always scanning the environment. It comes from Stephen Porges' work on polyvagal theory, and we're
Yeah.
always scanning the silent. It's the environment. It's called neuroception, and we're going, "Am I safe? Am I safe?" I meet someone new. Unconsciously, we go, "Am I safe with this person?" Um,
Right.
what is it about their dress? What's familiar about them? And we calculate in split seconds. Do I feel comfortable? Do I not? What energy are they giving off? There's a magnetic field that extends from our heart beyond the outer edge of our body, and we can detect when something's, and that's part of our signaling system. So we're really sophisticated as an animal, but all that leads into our nervous system, and we respond in a number of ways. Many of your listeners will know we talk about fight flight, which is I'm getting ready, and if I can't get away, I'm getting ready to fight. But hopefully I can get away, and I'm gonna find a way either to go as quickly as I can, or to make excuses and leave. It can be very, very subtle. I'm not particularly comfortable these days in bar environments where we go out for a drink, partly because I'm not a drinker, and partly, quite frankly, it's not my scene, and I'm comfortable saying that. It's like, you have a great time. But there was a time when I would go to a bar and I'd drink, and I'd drink more and more just to feel comfortable in that environment, which is kind of bizarre, but it's true. So we have fight flight, and we want to get away.
Yeah.
That then, when we move past that and we're overpowered, when either we're physically overpowered or usually emotionally overpowered, that turns into collapse.
Mm.
And we go through a stage of fawning, which is we'll try and please people, and we'll try and negotiate our way out of it and go, "Well, yeah, well, we'll do whatever, and that's okay. And yeah, if that's what you want to do, fine." And that's called
Right.
fawning. But then fawning, you don't get much option beyond that. And fawning then moves into collapse. And collapses, um, there's a stage where when a cat has a mouse, the mouse knows it's done for, and it just collapses. And sometimes the the cat will drop it because it'll kind of go, "Oh, I don't think I thought this was a meal, and what I've got in my mouth doesn't feel like a meal." So I'll go, I'll throw it away.
Right.
And if we think about how sharks behave in the ocean, yeah, they'll, most of the attacks on humans are mistaken identity. And
Hmm.
there are some very famous cases of people who uh, feigned death almost. But it was their nervous system doing that, and the shark just let them go, and they recovered from their ordeal. So we move into these various stages, and that's how we respond when we're overwhelmed by our internal feelings, or by circumstances that create discomfort within us.
Now, do you think it's also ego protection?
Yes, I do. Our ego, um, our ego, we don't want to die. Is if it comes down to it, we're born. We don't know that there's this thing called death, but there comes a point where we become aware of it, and then it
Yeah.
scares the bejeebus out of us for the rest of our life. And you've heard
Right.
the expression, "We need to die to live,"
Yeah.
which is actually very, very true. But yeah, our ego is protecting us. It's protecting the story of who we are. We're protecting our identity. So you can imagine, I'd gone through school, I'd failed. I was usually at the bottom of my class in most subjects, and then I went to college, and I started getting A grades. And as someone it's like throwing a puppy treats. It's kind of like an A grade. Cool. Can I have another A grade, please?
Yeah.
And then that turned into a virtuous cycle where all of a sudden I suddenly became quite academic. I wasn't gifted, but I knew how to score well on assignments, and
Yeah.
that led to, so I'm sort of going up, and this identity. Oh, I'm not a loser, and I I can think, and I can, I can equip myself well, alongside other people's, to the point where, I got my MBA and tucked that under my shirt, and that
Yeah.
enabled me to get into consulting. And I'm going, wow, how did I end up here? I was the kid that was like 5 years old.
Yeah.
But there's an ego in there, and there's an identity. So when I left, oh man, so I'd meet people like you, and they say, "So Paul, tell me about yourself." And the first thing that come out of my mouth was, "I'm an ex-management consultant, and I used to work for PwC, Capgemini, and IBM," because it was all part of my. It was a big thing, I didn't feel it was safe to go. I don't do that anymore, and because I don't do that anymore, and I don't have those labels, you
Yeah.
may not like me as much, and that doesn't feel safe because I've been in an environment where I've found my own story that I'm comfortable with and other people are comfortable with. And that
Yeah.
happens all the time. It happens, you read about elite sports stars that, have a glittering career and then it stops. And then they don't know what to do with themselves because their ego is going, well, who are you now, loser?
Right.
You're not doing these things. And that's how our ego is protecting us.
And do you think it's also like unprocessed belief patterns?
Yeah, I think so. I think we take on, we're sponges, and we take on all sorts of things consciously and unconsciously. So we'll receive messages like, "You're no good at art," or "You're really good at this," and we'll take that on board, and that sort of directs our life.
Yeah.
And it isn't until we come to question it. I remember reading about someone that said, "Yeah, how did I end up here?"
Right.
When I was coming through school said get good grades, so I got good grades. And then school said go to college, so I went to college and I got good grades there. And at college they said, well, what you need now is you need a good degree. Now you've got a good qualification or a degree, you need to go and get a good job. And then go out into the world and find your way and get married and start a family.
Yeah.
And so I went and did those things. And here I am now, and I'm thinking, hmm, how did that happen? How on earth did I get here? Because it isn't where I get a sense of where I want to be. I have
Mhm.
this, I call them the recurring theme. You know, I always wanted to do this, but I'll do it when,
Yeah.
I finish this journey. Um,
Mhm.
and then that creates a tension, and that's the discomfort. So yeah, we've got unprocessed beliefs, which may be things like, I always remember one. Um, we were taught, we were learning English, and we would read in class, in front of the class, which, as an awkward teenager was never the easiest thing anyway, because you'd feel awkward standing in front of the class and you'd be reading something that, yeah, reading Hamlet or a passage out of the Bible, which wasn't your natural reading material in your teen years.
Yeah. Right.
And I read this piece, and the teacher went, "Thank you very much," and then gave me some feedback, and it was well, I think that's the most dull voice I've ever listened to. And I just went, whoa, because in front of the class, that wouldn't feel good. Lots of shame, which is very wounding.
Oh yeah.
And I sat down and I believed that for quite some time, for the remainder of my school career. And then about 2012, I got an opportunity. Well, I invested in a course at Pinewood Studios where they make James Bond and Star Wars. And it was essentially a course to learn how to use your voice on screen and on podcasts. And we did a screen test, and I did one, and you get your feedback. And I thought, oh, this is going to be not comfortable. Um,
Yeah.
and they went around the class, and everybody said, so what do you think? And someone said, well, for selling stuff on TV, like selling channels, not exactly the voice you need, but for
Right.
business, wow. And then someone said, you sound just like John Craven from the BBC. And I went, and John Craven's was about 70 odd at the time, coming towards the end of his career, but a very distinguished
Yeah.
broadcaster. And I thought, yeah, that isn't the image I want. Yeah, I want to be Jimmy Fallon, not John Craven. And, and but then I let it settle, and I went and listened to him, and I went, if you think that's my voice, wow, I will take that. And
Hmm.
so that sort of nixed that belief about my voice out. So yeah, we take on all kinds of things, often quite innocently. You know, you don't look good in blue. It can be real simple stuff. You slurp when you drink coffee. Do I? Oh, okay. I won't drink coffee anymore then. And it's just interesting how all this stuff builds up like layers. They're like layers of an onion.
Right.
We're this beautiful diamond sat in the middle of it, and we've got all this rubbish and layers on top of us. That there comes a point where we either have an opportunity or we're actually kicked out the tree and go, you need to sort that out, or
Yeah.
here's your opportunity to sort that out. Who were you before you learned all these things?
Right. So
Go
true.
find out. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've lived it, so I know it.
Why do smart people or thoughtful people still lose their composure?
I think there's a number of reasons. I mean, it's you often because there's a conflict in values. You value something else, something that I don't, or it rubs against me. You value. I remember one training course I did, which was called Positive Power and Influence, and the exercise was you had to defend fox hunting.
Right.
That was huge, and I was like, how on earth can you defend? And to go through that exercise teaches
Yeah.
you to try and sit in the shoes of the other person, to
Hmm.
try and understand their particular view of the world,
Right.
what it is they're saying, and to try and get a perspective on that. I tell you, that happened to me very recently. About we were visiting some friends, and we sat down and we were talking about Elon Musk. And Elon had just gone through this whole thing where he'd done the thing with the chainsaw on television and was getting a lot of reaction that was frankly adverse. And I'll admit I was amongst the group that thought I'll say it politely and say that's a bit strange. Um, and we were having this conversation around the around dinner table, and someone said, and I said, yeah, I know Elon had a very tough upbringing. He was very badly beaten as a child and badly bullied. So I have some compassion and empathy, but there are certain bits of it that I kind of go, I think because it was attached to the politics that is going on. I thought, oh, that's really problematic. And then my friend said, you do know he's had a diagnosis of autism. I went, no. I said, that doesn't come out in the press. And by having that changed view, it's softened. I was able to have a bit more compassion and maybe step a bit more into those shoes. I still
Yeah.
disagree with what he did, but it wasn't lose composure. It was I disagree with what you say, not
Right.
I'm going to shout at the television, knowing full well that it's not going to make any difference to
Hmm.
anyone else, but it'll make me feel better. And so when our values are crossed, often then um, that's one way to lose composure. Another is that um, we will be triggered by something that we don't quite understand, and
Right.
it's often because we will see something in the other person that's within us,
Yes.
and because we don't like that and don't feel comfortable, the natural thing is to push it away and
Yeah.
push it out rather than sit in the balcony and take a look at ourselves and go, that's interesting. I wonder what that's all about, which is the inner work that we invariably have to do if we're going to
Yeah.
get past all this stuff.
So true. Now, what happens long term when someone lives in reaction mode, like strained relationships or leadership breakdown or emotional exhaustion or loss of trust?
I think it can go several ways. There's it can show up in addictions. It can show up in addictions to substances, addictions to processes.
Mm.
Um, it can show up in burnout. We keep trying to feel better and better, but our body, and we get pushed harder and harder. And
Yeah.
it's like holding the pedal to the metal in a car.
Mm.
If you push on the gas pedal, you watch the rev counter disappear into the red zone, and if you
Yeah.
leave it in the red zone long enough, then the engine will just get too hot, burn all the components, and burn them out literally. And consequently, there's different ways that happens. You get warning signals along the way. I used to
Mm.
go on holiday after each year for a couple of weeks, and we'd always go somewhere warm in the Mediterranean. And for the first 3 days, I would sleep. I I I literally would sleep all night. I wouldn't get up till about 11, maybe have a small breakfast. Then I'd be really tired again, and then I'd
Right.
sleep till about 4. Then, because I needed to get fresh air, and because I was with family at the time, obviously I needed to participate in that. So made the effort, but come back and go back to sleep. And it would take time for my body to recover. And it
Right.
was letting me know that it had just been pushed too far. And it's
Right.
like anything, we all have a different window of tolerance. You know, some of us can withstand lots and lots and lots of pressure
Mm-hmm.
because we've educated our nervous system to be able to do that. So one of
Yeah.
the things we learn in martial arts is actually to regulate our system under pressure. I came back today from doing some Shinai practice, which is working with bamboo swords, and I'm working with my chief instructor, who's decidedly happy and capable at wielding a sword. And he was saying the aim of the exercise is to get an emotional reaction from your training partner,
Right.
because by doing that you're actually training the system to regulate. And I have to say I was quite pleased with how I handled that, and I was able to walk away even though my instructor was coming after me fairly fast and fairly aggressively. And you kind of go, okay, that's good. And we train for that. The elite military trains for that, um, for exactly that reason. Can you walk through chaos and
Right.
still stay on course?
Right. Now, why is awareness not enough?
Um, because I don't think you can ever be fully aware.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I might say to you, so Stacey, how aware are you right now? And because we receive so much information, and our conscious brain can only process so much,
Yeah.
it becomes difficult. What do you pay attention to? If there's billions of bits of information coming at you, then if you're trying to work out if you're safe, then
Yeah.
then depending on how you've been conditioned, what beliefs you have, you'll pay attention to the things that are most important to you.
Right.
Anything that's challenging your ego, anything that's challenging your identity, anything that's challenging your physical safety, anything that's causing you're paying attention. Where is that? What is it? As
Mm-hmm.
opposed to being able to stay calm and to use bodily functions like the breath. I know it sounds simple. It is simple on many levels.
Mm-hmm.
The relaxing of the eyes, softening of the gaze, sinking the weight into the part of the body so that we become much more grounded. What that does is it clears the fog from the prefrontal cortex, which is then trying to make judgments and executive decisions about, oh, what do I pay attention to? And,
Right.
and, and what do I need to be aware of in this context? And am I in a place where I need to respond, or can I actually wait and wait and wait until I formulated what is perhaps the most appropriate response?
Right.
What if no response is needed? We're so educated to, here's a problem, you
Yeah.
need to respond. It's like you run a workshop, and every workshop needs an outcome. My question is, does it? or is the value in having the conversations and letting them flow
Right.
and then leaving the room? Because often it is, and we don't talk about that. What we talk about is what Otto Scharmer describes as absencing. We
Mm.
have a tick list. We kind of go, yep, did we get all the outcomes? Great. Tick, 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 tick.
Yeah.
We don't do presencing. We
Mm.
don't do the open the mind, open the
Right.
heart. What is it we now need to allow ourselves to notice that we
Right.
may not have noticed before? And to
Mm-hmm.
be okay with that. Problem is, you get silence, and people go, "Oh, silence," and everyone who's scanning is kind of go, "Oh, does that mean it's dangerous? Oh, I need to fill the silence with something." And the
Yeah.
reason I fill the silence with something is not to fill it with anything necessarily that's useful. It's to make me feel good. I'm having a
Right.
cigarette. I'm having a beer. I'm
Mm.
filling the silence. And that makes us feel safe, makes us feel more comfortable. Whereas it's unusual to sit for 2 minutes and look at people and say
Yeah.
nothing
Mm-hmm.
and try to meet, try to allow them to meet you rather
Right.
than you meet them. It's great practice. It's
Yeah.
really unnerving to begin with, but it's a great practice to sit, because the more you do that, the more you're in stillness, the more
Mm-hmm.
present you are.
Yes.
The more present you are, the more aware you are. So actually, it's counterintuitive. We become more aware by doing less.
Yes. That
That makes
is
sense.
oh, makes total sense. Now I want to talk about the GRACE framework. Now,
Okay.
bring us into the system. Like walk us through what GRACE stands for.
So grace is a very, very simple framework. The G stands for grounding. And what grounding is all about is how aligned am I in mind uh, and body and values? Am I in that place where I can be comfortable saying nothing, being still, and allowing whatever to emerge? At a very simple level, that's what grounding is. And you can measure it. You can measure it through heart rate variance. So anyone who's come across Heart Math Institute's work and some of their centers,
Mhm.
you can actually watch coherence happen. And coherence is when our brain waves uh, go in parallel with our heart waves. And that's what
Right.
coherence is. When they're out of sync, they're all over the place. And that's when we feel discomfort. So that's what grounding's about. And there are many, many ways to get grounded, and practices. And what I do with the framework is I say this isn't a do it my way framework.
Mhm.
This isn't a 7 steps to heaven framework.
Yeah.
This is a useful framework for you to explore and find what works for you. So I may say to you, if you want to get grounded, go and spend 2 hours in a forest and walk. Let the terpenes from the trees go get into your skin, into your bloodstream. You'll feel better. So I feel, I've got 2 hours and I don't like walking in the forest. It's wet and it's damp and it's cold.
Yeah.
Okay, go for a run. Go for a run for half an hour.
Hmm.
I don't like running. Okay, go for a swim. Do that. Takes a long time to go swimming. I've got to get there. I've got to get undressed. I've got to get wet. I've got to dry off, get dressed and go, okay, what else would you like to do? Now for me, it was martial arts.
Hmm.
I found that, I hate running with a passion. I admire anyone that can do it to any distance. I really do. Hats off to you. You're amazing. Um, I used to like riding bikes, but it had to be flat. It had to be sunny. Actually, it had to be Santa Monica Boulevard, if the truth really be known. With on a beach by the sea, sunshine, and just an easy ride.
Yeah.
So that wasn't for me. But for some reason, the martial arts really got under my skin, and I found it as a practice that did bring me to a state of groundedness.
Hmm.
And as I started to pay attention to that and start to look underneath why was that, so many things dropped into place. But essentially, we're trying to change our biochemistry. We're trying
Right.
to change our coherence. So that's grounding.
Hmm.
Resolve is the R in grace. And resolve really tries to address some of the problems um, with smart goal setting. So everyone goes, set a goal.
Hmm.
It has to be smart. And you kind of go, yeah.
Yeah.
Smart goals work in very specific contexts. I'm being shot at. I need to get from here to there in the next 5 seconds without being shot.
Right.
You can have a smart goal. That's okay. I want to earn my second degree black belt in Aikido. That's a goal. I
Hmm.
could make it smart, but what happens when I fail? What happens when I fail the mock
Hmm.
test? You know, does that mean my goal's over? And so in Resolve, what I'm trying to encourage people to do is do a couple of things. One, set an intention. Now, for
Hmm.
all the people that say the road to hell is paved with good intention, that's actually not true, because intention requires grounding to begin with,
Yes.
and resolve requires us to set goals, but to hold them lightly. And the Olympics is a perfect example of this. So, how many competitors go to the Olympics?
Right.
Several thousand, yeah, a couple of thousand. How many medals are there?
Yeah.
A few hundred. So, hang on a minute. Why do they do it? Because logically, doesn't make sense. The probability doesn't work. So there must be a reason why they do it. And the athletes that a lot of elite athletes will tell you it's not about the medal, it's about the process. They've fallen in love with that process, that resolve to yeah, I'm going to strive. I'm going to do the things that try to win it, but the winning of it is it is the icing on the cake. It's not what that's about. And that's what I'm trying to encourage with Resolve is to look at goal setting realistically. Because sometimes in business we move into a job and they go, right, there's your goals. You go, they're not my goals. They're your goals. They are. Um, we used to have this in IBM. It'd be like, right, the goals have been set up here and they've been come down to this division and they come down to this team and your goals are this. You go,
Right.
do I get any say in this? Um, what would you like to do for give back? And you kind of go, well, they're not my goals then, are they? But
Yeah.
I'm part of this system. So Resolve's really addressing a lot of issues around goal setting to try and create something that allows us to have direction, but direction with resolve, direction with intent. In Aikido, the martial art we talk about move entering with intent. It's like if once I commit and I don't go back. The boats are burned, the bridges are burned. I'm going, but I'm not doing it mindlessly, and I'm not doing it at all costs.
Right.
A is for acceptance, and there's three levels of acceptance. There's acceptance of self. So this is where we go, oh, I'm not good enough, and you kind of go, bit of work to do there. That my voice isn't good enough. To
Right.
do the work that changes that narrative, that changes that story. Lots of self acceptance and understanding where our self worth holes are. What is it that takes us into that slump of
Yeah.
oh, I'm not enough, because that lays us out on a couch, or it takes us doing things we shouldn't be doing that aren't really positive and constructive for us, and
Yeah.
no value judgments there. There's also acceptance of other. This is the tough one. And there is, are you familiar with Tim Minchin at all?
No, no,
He's a
not.
piano player from Australia, but he wrote the musical Matilda, which is known because it's been on Broadway, it's been in the West End in London. Fantastically funny guy, but a very wise gentleman as well. And there's a wonderful interview with him on one of the UK news channels. And he said, yeah, we can be kind and generous to
Hmm.
anyone that's like us, thinks
Right.
like us, talks like us, looks like us, dresses like us.
Right.
That's easy. He said, but how long can you hold your arms wide open for the people that aren't that?
Right.
For those people who hold different values, who have different ideologies? Do you just judge and shut down? Or are you open enough to accept them as different to you in a way that sparks curiosity? I don't understand your politics. I really don't. But I'm curious enough to want to know, help me understand. Talk to
Right.
me about it. I want to know about it because if I know about it, I'm better informed. And then I
Mm.
can still make a choice, which is I still don't agree with that, but I do it from a place of composure and balance. I
Yes.
do it from a non-reactive stance. So I'm in this place of stillness. I like to call it stillness,
Yeah.
where I can then still make choices. And it's not easy. It really isn't easy, but you can train it. And then
Hmm.
the last thing is acceptance of system. Yeah, we live in a world that's governed by the flow of money.
Yes.
I wish to goodness we didn't. I think life could be very different
Yeah.
for everyone if we didn't. If we share, find ways to share and support, and you know, nobody should be without a home. Nobody should be starving. There is enough. But for some
Yeah.
reason, for whatever reason that is, there is a system at work that says whoever gets the most wins.
Yeah.
And fine. Part of, I'm not saying you should become a monk and abstain from, give all back your technology and go, no, I'm just going to live on carrots and and uh, and water. Uh,
Yeah.
but there is a balance, and therefore there's a need to. I worked in IBM, and IBM is a massive organization, and it is a system. It needs to be if it's going to function efficiently.
Right.
And you've got a choice. You can either accept it or not.
Right.
And if you don't accept it, you can walk away. It doesn't mean you have to have a value judgment. I thought there
Yes.
was there was a ton of things right with IBM. There was a ton of things wrong with IBM, and I am so grateful that I had the opportunities I was given as a result. Some of them weren't easy. Some of them were pleasurable. Um, and that's acceptance of system. And it's not easy, but acceptance is an important part of grace. Now, if
Yes.
you've dealt with grounding and resolve and acceptance, you're then in a place where you can create.
Yes.
But it's the kind of creation you do from a place of that's very scary, which is here's a blank piece of paper. I don't want you to
Right.
come up with anything that we've done before. The thinking that got us here into this mess is not the thinking that's going to solve that mess.
Right.
We need some new thinking.
Hmm.
And it's that courage to kind of go, okay, I'm going to write a crappy first draft, or you're going to laugh at my first idea because it might be rubbish, but it's having that courage to step over that threshold and say,
Yeah.
I'm going to give it a go. Because by the time I've got to my 10th try, I'm
Hmm.
better than my first try. And by the
Yeah.
way, if I can find people who are better than me, so I am accepting that there are people better than me, more intelligent, smarter, they might actually help me solve this
Hmm.
problem. I've got this energy, and I bring this to the table. But what can you bring to the table? And I think create therefore becomes an act of courage.
Hmm.
Create isn't limited. It's we're open to all kinds of possibilities on the radar of okay. So what? Yeah, if money was no object and you couldn't fail, what would you do? And you go, well,
Right.
I create this. I go, on you go then. I had a client, and that's exactly what she said. I said to her, right, get a piece of paper, this pen, two conditions. You've got all the money you need and you can't fail. What are you going to do? Oh, well, I'm going to work in musical theatre. I went, okay, on you go. And we all have that. That's the thing. We all have that thing. And the thing is, we need to get to a point where we make a choice. What is that thing, that recurring thing that keeps coming back on our life?
Yes.
And how can I entertain that in a way in the current system, in the current environment, with my experience and all those things, in a way that allows it rather than suppresses it? So create's
Yeah.
really important. And then the
Yes.
last the last letter is E, which is to embody it. And embody is a confusing term. So I explain it this way. If you want to build a bicep or a muscle on your body, what do? You go to the gym every day, you do your reps. It's as
Right.
simple as that. Do the
Hmm.
reps every day. Just be consistent, show up and do the reps because you will inevitably get better, whatever it is, to the point where you don't have to think about it. You know, um, again, I go back to the martial arts. There are certain things I can do, and I actually don't have to think about them because I've practiced them enough. But then there's a
Hmm.
whole bunch of other things I can't do, and I have to go. Hang on, you want me to do what? Um, and so that's what embodiment is, and that framework It's not linear, it's circular. So you can start anywhere. You might start with, I'm at create. I need to
Yeah.
create something. And you kind of go, okay, are you grounded? Oh, well, actually, no. And what is it you're not accepting? Oh, well, I'm not very good at art, or I'm not very good, or I'm not very good. I'm working with a chief executive right now, and he constantly says to me, he says, well, I'm not very good with words. And I said, that's fine. You're great with ideas.
Right.
What you need is a partner that helps you get those words out of you. So you go messy, 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 jumbled words, and you go, I've interpreted that. The meaning I make of that group of words is this. Did I get it right? And you go, oh
Hmm.
yeah. And you go, okay, great, good. And that's helping him accept that actually he has strengths and he's unable to do other stuff, but put people around you that can do that. That's
Yeah.
okay. So embed the whole grace framework is really something that gives people a way of finding the tools and choices they need to make to move from where they are now, which is usually, I'm over functioning. What does over functioning mean? Over functioning basically means your resume and your CV looks fantastic,
Mhm.
but your daily life doesn't reflect that at all. You're
Right.
stressed, you're exhausted, you've got some habits that you know aren't good for you. Um,
Hmm.
you're impacting your family in ways that you know you don't want to, but you know you're doing it. And you're somehow trapped. You know there's more to life, but you don't necessarily know what the next step is. If you're the
Right.
chief breadwinner and you're earning 150K and you've got car loans, the mortgage, you kind of go, goodness, how am I going to get from there to there? I can't just do the make a fist, say yes, and
Yeah.
go. Um, which is what a lot of people in the life coaching world used to do, and some of them still do. You
Yeah.
really do have to take your brain with you, and you do have to do all that inner work to go, well, who am I now? And what is it that drives me from the inside? And how does that show up in my behavior? And what do I
Right.
value? What are the things that what are the things that get me to a state of joy and flow? Um,
Hmm.
so that's the grace framework. Thanks for asking.
I love that. I love that. Now, how do you practice this in like a heated moment?
Um, you take a small step. You do one thing and you just practice that. I'm just working with a chief operating officer right now, and he said to me, "I want to be more assertive." You know, which by that he means I want to have more grace in the way I communicate, because either he shuts down and doesn't say anything and
Yeah.
withdraws, which isn't good for anyone. It isn't good for him. It isn't good for it isn't good for the group he works with, and it isn't good for the people that report into him. So he's been courageous enough to say, I need to work on this. Can you give me something? I said,
Yeah.
well, the leadership is language. Language creates the fabric of our reality,
Right.
and therefore, if I can give you new language patterns, which are usually in the form of questions
Hmm.
that you're not used to using, pick one and use it. Use it for
Yeah.
the next 2 weeks. See how
Hmm.
you get on.
Right.
When did it work? When didn't it work? Why didn't it work? What were you feeling? What were you thinking? What was the situation?
Right.
How did that make you feel? How did that make you? And it's that willingness to delve to that level of depth that most of us don't have time for. It's like, oh, I haven't got time for that. I remember I was coaching an executive partner in IBM, and we finished the session early. Sometimes I'll finish the session early because I sense there's a need for some breathing space.
Yeah.
And he said, well, what am I going to do now? And I said, well, it's a nice day outside. Why don't you go for a walk for 10 minutes just before your whatever's coming next? And he said, oh, I haven't got time for that. I need to go and do this, and I need to go and do that, and I can answer some emails, and I can do this and I can do that. And you kind of go, okay, it's your choice.
Hmm.
But that cycle of behavior is automated patterns of behavior. It's kind of like that's the expectation. Even
Hmm.
just breaking that cycle can be quite difficult. Something as simple as that. What do you
Yeah.
mean I've just got to breathe? I can teach you box breathing. I've got
Mhm.
a I've got a free PDF I can send you that goes, here's two things that will help. Here's how to center yourself, which is all about how to get grounded. And you can do
Yeah.
that seated, you can do that standing, and you can do it really discreetly in the middle of important meeting or presentation, and I can teach you how to breathe doing box breathing, which is, the Navy SEALs do, people in highly stressful environments.
Right.
You'll go, yeah, thanks very much. I don't need that right now. You go, okay. And it's a choice.
Right.
And you have to get to a point where there's enough discomfort to go, what I'm doing right now just isn't working out the way I want it to work out. I need to do something different. And you know what? I don't know what that is. But I'm in
Yes.
enough pain to go, someone help me do something different, even if it's what, because this is horrible.
Right. Now, how would they, if we were in different situations, so I'll name a few situations, how would they apply the grace step, step by step? Like, let's say if a person is in a tough marriage conversation.
So what is it you need to accept about that situation? Because it's probably accepting of a situation. You've probably realized that for whatever reason, that process of, so we talk about there's a problem with the relationship is the
Hmm.
first thing. There isn't a problem with the relationship. Relationship is a noun. Marriage is a noun.
Right.
Partnership is a noun. There's a problem with the process of relating. So
Hmm.
what is that? What is it? Yeah, let's take a deep dive. Let's stand on the balcony and look at my part in this. What is it I need to accept and acknowledge that I am doing that is actually not helping the situation or making the
Yeah.
situation worse? Because until we get to that acceptance, we're not going to get to a conversation which gets you to a point of grounding, which then gets you a point of resolve that says, we need to have a conversation because I know this isn't going to the place. This isn't what we hope for.
Hmm.
And yes, we may have some choices along the way. Yeah. For now, it might be I want to repair that,
Right.
and if I want to repair that, I don't want to get that. Yeah, I have to be grounded because it doesn't take much to go. Oh, you're triggered.
Yeah.
Yeah. You left the toothpaste top, top off the toothpaste again. The toilet seat's up once more. You don't do anything in the house. Oh, you stack the dishwasher. Good. Well done. Uh, but but you do it in a way that I don't like. It's all that stuff, and therefore there's a certain amount of self-examination I would suggest. But
Yeah.
where do you want to start on the grace framework? Is it that you just don't feel grounded, and that's where you need to start, or maybe
Hmm.
you need to find resolve that says actually, yeah, I want this relationship to continue.
Yeah.
That's the resolve. So you hold on to that. You don't set a goal that goes, right, by this time, the relationship will be repaired. Um,
Right.
because it's a process of dialogue. It's a process of imprecise language, trying to express deeper feelings
Yes.
and exploring what they are and what they mean. And yeah, that means that to you, and that means to me. It's also learning things to um, simple things like, you make me angry. No, you don't. I choose to be angry.
Yeah.
So therefore, I need to own it and I need to accept that's what I need to do. And you can
Yeah.
just have conversations for, but she, or but he, or this, that, and the other. Um, and you kind of go, okay. So you can start to see how the grace framework in that situation can be
Yeah.
used. Yeah, just simple breathing. Can you, if you feel yourself rising, if you feel, just bring yourself back to center.
Right. And what about like managing a stress team?
Well, we have to understand what is it that's causing the team to be stressed and what is stressed.
Right.
Yeah. So there's various behaviors happening. And the first question when we see a behavior is not why is that behavior,
Right.
but what is it that's causing you to choose that behavior? So there's a step before that. And therefore it's understanding on a one-to-one what's going on. I'm noticing this, what this, and again, the use of language becomes important. The
Yeah.
story I'm telling myself when I look at how the team's working together is this: have I got that story right? Could I be wrong? Do I accept as the leader of the team that I don't know everything, that I can't wave a magic wand and make, especially when I've got pressure on down on top of me where someone's going, will you make this team perform? We've got
Yeah.
10 teams that do the same sort of job, but out of the 10 teams, it's your team that's the problem. Will you
Right.
fix the team? And you have to get to a point where you go, how do I have the conversation that says, I have no control over fixing the team?
Right.
I can't. It's very often I'll get brought in and the unspoken brief is fix my team. And you kind of go, okay, let's explore that. And yeah, that takes some time to uncover that. So what is it we need to accept about the situation? What is it we need to accept about each other? What is it? Very often the team will rebel because this, you know, I'm sure you've heard the expression that the farmer goes out when he sees the field of corn not growing, he doesn't walk over to the corn and go, oi, will you grow? Will you sort yourself out? You're not growing the way I need you to grow
Right.
because we've got a market over there that needs corn that's properly grown and you're not doing it. We don't do that, do we? We kind of go, what's wrong with the soil?
Yeah.
What do I need to do we need to put do we need to drain it? Do we need to put fertilizer on it? What food do we need to put on it? Are there predators that are making what's making this difficult? And we have
Hmm.
to just a simple step back of, well, there's something about the system, there's something about working together, and there's something about the individual. So it's not a problem to be solved. It's a potential to be realized. And
Exactly.
if we're willing to, we have to be in I'm going to call it a state of grace. What I mean is I've applied the grace framework. We have to be in that state where we're willing to say, okay, I need to get curious about this. And I accept that I'm not going to get the answer in 5 minutes. And by the way, I need to tell them that it's not 5 minutes. I need
Right.
to be grounded enough to do that and speak truth to power with civility and go, I
Yeah.
know you want that fixed. I appreciate that. To fix
Mhm.
it, we need to do these things. We need to go through these assumptions.
Can
And
you
and
walk us through a live example?
yeah, I worked with a team of 16. I'm still working with them. We started 17 months ago. And usually with a team, I'll go in with some kind of measuring tool. The tool I like to use is the leadership circle. The reason I
Hmm.
like the leadership circle, and there are other good tools out there. And the thing about all these tools is all of them are flawed. Some are more useful than others. But the most
Right.
important thing is they start a conversation. And it's the conversation that really matters. But what I love about the collective leadership assessment is it's a simple litmus test. It
Right.
says, how do you feel about the culture you've got now? And what's the culture you want? Then you get this circular graph. There's the culture they wanted was diametrically the opposite of the culture they said they had. That was it. And I literally just had to put the graph up and go, so what do you see?
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
And then
Uh, Go ahead.
what's the energy? What do you have energy for? What are you curious about now that you see this? And
Hmm.
we've set the grounds rule of no backbiting, no pointing fingers, because you're all in this together.
Yes.
If and you've all said you want to work together better. Have I still got that right? Yes. Okay. Good. So what are you curious about? Why is
Hmm.
this happening? And then stuff starts to come out in conversations, and then you get to the end of uh, a full day workshop where there's a list of things that they think we there's a few common themes that we need to address, and
Yeah.
some of it can be as simple as um, the one they're working on right now. This sounds ridiculous. Um, is if I make a promise, I keep it. If I
Yeah.
can't keep it, I don't make it. And if I
Mhm.
make it and it, it doesn't go to plan, I let everyone know so early so there's no surprises and I manage
Right.
expectation. That sounds so simple, doesn't it? You would
Hmm.
think, yeah, anyone can do that. And yet when you put them in the system of this is going off and that's going off, we need to do this and that's happened and we've just run out of this and customer X is doing that and we want to
Right.
close this deal because if we close that deal that gives us this and we've got a record breaking month and all that kind of stuff. When you put it in that mix, it becomes really interesting. So we
Yeah.
start there, and then we look at the individuals, and then we do the same thing. We go, how are your inner assumptions? How's your inner operating system, for want of a word, expressing itself in its behavior? And then you'll get creative capabilities, which is all the good stuff about, I'm balanced, I'm composed, I'm comfortable speaking with courageous authenticity, I'm a good mentor, I'm a team player, I'm a system thinker, I've got vision, I get results, all round, all, whether it's people competencies or task competencies,
Right.
you get some measure of that. And then you get all the reactive tendencies that come out, and you go, and everybody shies away from them. They go, "Oh, it's really bad. This means I'm bad." And you go, "No, this means you weren't aware of how you react and how that has an impact. Now you are.
Yeah.
What do you want to keep? Because some of it's good. If you're critical of other people, you can be critical and constructive, because actually that may be doing quality assessment. You're doing QA work that says, I suppose, that don't send that out through the door. There's an error in that. You want that criticism. What you
Yes.
don't want is that the criticism that goes, I know best, and I'm going
Hmm.
to criticize you because I'm the one that knows best. And my identity and my narrative, it's important that I am the best, because when I grew up, I needed to be the best. And
Hmm.
you simply ask the question, if you're not the best, then who are you? And then people go, oh, and then we start to have an interesting developmental conversation.
I love that. Now, if someone was listening today and remembered only one piece of the GRACE framework, what should it be?
Ground yourself. I think because grounding is, whilst I talk about it being the circle, it's often the place you go to first to be able to do something.
Hmm.
Ground yourself. What is it that's causing the noise? What is it that's causing you to um, be off center, be off balance? We all fall off the horse when we're riding a horse. The trick is, how quickly can you get back on the horse?
Yes.
Um, and it's accepting that we do that. We're not perfect. We couldn't be. We'd be unbearable. Um, and therefore, getting to a state of coherence where we've got mind, body, values aligned, where we're breathing, where we haven't got the fog in our brain because our thoughts are racing and we're going, "Am I safe? Am I safe? Am I safe?" It's all about me. So I need to protect my ego. It's kind of like, no, can I breathe? Can I settle into myself? Can I ground myself? And can I now be present and aware? And how can I fine tune that presence? And I describe it as, have you ever looked at a leaf on a tree? And everyone goes, yeah, I've looked at a leaf. I said, have you looked up close? And you just go, yeah, I've picked up a leaf. I've looked. I said, have you ever noticed the beautiful patterns and the different shades? How many shades of green are there in a leaf?
Yeah.
You go, ooh, I hadn't thought of it like that. And therefore, that's what we're trying to get to. Perhaps not the best example, but you know what I mean.
I know.
You're trying to get to a place of stillness where you're able to take in and observe more without striving.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I love that. Now, tell us a little about your services and what you provide for people.
So I do one-to-one coaching. I do team coaching. That's the majority of my work, um, in terms of paid work, um, and working with individuals. One-to-ones usually start at 6 months, so you won't get much change. The kind of change you're looking for takes that long. It just does. You've got to unwrap the onion. You've got to
Yeah.
allow time for. You could use the word healing, but integration is another word,
Yeah.
that you could use to go, okay, I've taken the layers off. Who am I now? I need to get used to that. I need to rehearse the story of who I am now that I'm comfortable with, and I'm
Yeah.
more comfortable in my skin, and all that. That just takes time. Um, teams you can expect to be working for a minimum of 12 months, probably 2 years, just because the complexity of the system. Anyone who tells you differently is clearly trying to fix their team. Good luck with that. Um, so those are the primary services I do as sort of the bread and butter of my work.
Now, where can people find you?
So if people want to connect, please. get in touch via LinkedIn. That's often the quickest way. I respond to everyone. I've got about 8,000 followers and 6,000 people in the network. That doesn't matter. I just, I'm very gregarious in that respect. And there's no agenda. Let's meet human to human.
Right.
Goodness knows we need to do that more and more,
Mhm.
and do that. If you want to read how I think, then I have a Substack, um, and the Substack is called the GRACEWorks Collective, and that talks about aspects of grace. And the idea of that newsletter is really to get people to think differently.
Yes.
Where are we absencing? How do we become more present? What's getting in the way of that? How do we choose that? I mean, at 50,000 feet is a very simple process. Stop
Mhm.
absencing, become more present.
I love
Yeah,
that.
if it was that easy, we'd all do it, wouldn't it?
We
So,
would.
so, so yeah, that's where I think out loud, and I share some resources on that too. I have a podcast, which is a private podcast, which you can sign up to. It doesn't cost you anything. The reason I get people to sign up to it is because I want people who are interested. I don't want tire kickers. I want people who are thinking about exactly what we've been talking about here. I'm in
Exactly.
this place where I'm experiencing some level of discomfort from, I'm just starting to notice stuff, to the
Mhm.
place where I am really uncomfortable and I want to do something now, but I don't know what to do next.
Right.
Um, so the podcast gives you lived experience of other people who've gone through similar processes. It's their story. I recently interviewed one of the founders of MTV, and he was talking about his corporate life and then his commitment, how that transmuted into a commitment to a spiritual life and what that means, and some of the challenges that brought up. So it's what's people's lived experience. So it's not just me. It's I want people to tell their story. I'm always looking for guests. So if you've got a great story, do get in touch, because we can put an episode together, and share your story, and shine a spotlight. Because what happens is people hear it and go, well, if they can do it, perhaps I can do it too. And that's
Exactly.
what I want. That's what I want to try and do, is spark that little, tipping people over the tipping point to go, maybe I'll give
Exactly.
it a go. Maybe, and therefore I can be healthy. And then the impact is, well, if I can be healthier, maybe that knocks onto my family. If that knocks onto my family, maybe that knocks onto my community. It's a
Yeah.
ridiculous dream, but if I can do it for one, um, then it makes a difference. So that's the podcast. On LinkedIn, you'll find a link to a free masterclass, which is also a podcast, but it
Mhm.
goes into the Grace framework in a little more detail. It sort of explains kind of what I've explained here, in a bit more. And then there's an app coming, uh, probably in the second half of the year, which is going to give practices and rituals. So it's literally, that's where you go and do the practice.
Oh, I love.
And then I'm going to run various groups. I've got an idea for grace circles, where people just show up, but we don't work through a workshop. We just show up, and we meet each other.
I
And you
love
kind of
that.
go, that's ridiculous. If it's a workshop, it needs an outcome, doesn't it? And you go, yeah, the outcome is just witnessing each other,
Yeah,
because it's powerful. It's really powerful.
that's so true. That's so true.
So that's how you can find me.
I love it. I love it. Well, this has been amazing, Paul. I am so glad you came on the show today. I love to have you back. I think the Grace framework is amazing. I really think it gives really people good perspective how they could take a step back and look at things differently and then readjust their lifestyle so they could really see things on a productive level. We don't rise to the level of our intentions. We fall to the level of our systems. And when pressure rises, you need structure, not motivation. And, I want to just reach out to our listeners. If today's conversation gave you language for what you've been feeling, that, this is your starting point right here, and just so you know that I'll include Paul's information in the show notes for anyone who wants to go deeper into the Grace framework. And Paul, this has just been an outstanding interview. I really enjoyed having you on the show. You're an amazing individual, and I'm so glad you're out there helping so many people, and personal and at work. And you're doing a wonderful job. And I thank you so much for sharing your knowledge today on our show.
Stacey, thank you for being so gracious and generous as a host. It's been a pleasure to be with you today. Thank you.
So much. It's been a pleasure having you. You have a great day.
You too.